Okay, hello again. It's Patty from Patty Logger ND, and using my laptop, I don't know what the hell that was. Using my laptop, I've been cut off multiple times trying to do this live Facebook Q&A, so I'm using my cell phone at the moment. Sorry, buddy. Um, so I apologize for all of the interruptions for those of you that may have been watching this. I don't know if I can just sit where I was sitting, or maybe I'll go outside and play with my dogs. Oh, I've got 3 people. Hi, it's Patty Logger from Patty Logger ND, and I don't know, I want to go outside and talk, but I don't know if my neighbors are out, and I don't know if I want them to hear everything I have to say. You know what? Everybody needs to hear this, so maybe it's a good thing that people are out and about. It's a beautiful day though today, and one way I can keep my dogs from barking is by playing with them constantly. So I was talking about, and I'm hoping that those of you that are watching this can hear me okay. I don't have any headphones on at the moment. But I was talking about the textbook that I plan on writing, Human Anatomy and Physiology textbook. And it's going to be for natural health professionals. And unlike the current Human Anatomy and Physiology textbooks that are on the market, that most pre-med and pre-nursing students use, this textbook will have correlative or kind of connected natural healing techniques embedded within each body system that's covered. And before I was interrupted, just last time when I was doing this on my laptop, I was talking about Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez and his book, which is called The Trophoblastic Origin of Cancer. So what does that even mean, right? So then the trophoblast is something you will learn about in my online Human Anatomy and Physiology book, or course. It's actually covered in the very last chapter on pregnancy and development. And the trophoblast is a stage of development. Well, it's actually a component of a stage of development. So when the sperm fertilizes the oocyte, that's what the woman produces at ovulation. So when the sperm fertilizes, more technically, the secondary oocyte, what's formed is called a zygote. And this zygote, which is the first real human cell, the first human diploid cell with all 46 chromosomes, this starts dividing by mitosis, and it becomes a ball of cells called a morula. And then this solid ball of cells forms a hollow center. And when it forms that hollow center, the stage of development we're still in pre-embryonic stage, but this stage is called the blastocyst. And the blastocyst really has 2 main components. It has what's called the inner cell mass. And the inner cell mass is what will become the human. And then it has this like kind of layer of cells around the inner cell mass called the trophoblast. And the trophoblast really does give rise to extra embryonic structures like the placenta, the allantois, the yolk sac, the amniotic sac. And so those are the things that help to sustain pregnancy so that the embryo can grow and become a fetus and then reach full term. And so Dr. Gonzalez, he connects, or he has done research, because other people have noticed this before him, but he made this known to me, that this trophoblast is very much like cancer. And being like cancer, it can become invasive, and it can create its own blood supply. And that's exactly what an implanting blastocyst does. In fact, maybe you know or do not know, but anywhere the blastocyst implants, it will induce the formation of a placenta. And sorry, I'm getting these notifications. But yeah, it will induce the formation of a placenta. So there have been actually documented cases of, and a lot of times this occurs with in vitro fertilization, where a blastocyst is implanted in locations like the surface of the urinary bladder, or somewhere else in the abdominopelvic cavity, because it can actually escape and not go into the uterus after it's been fertilized if it goes in the wrong direction. And wherever it implants, it induces the formation of a placenta. And what the placenta is basically two different groups of blood vessels. One blood vessel set belongs to the embryo and fetus, and the other to the mother. And so you just kind of have these two adjacent capillary beds where nutrients and oxygen and carbon dioxide and waste products, where they're exchanged between these two living systems. And how is this like cancer? Well, basically when cancers start growing out of control, they too induce their own blood supply. And that's how they spread, that's how they get larger in size, and that's really how they become so debilitating, because they really start to, they get really greedy for oxygen and for, and I don't know about oxygen per se, because some say that cancer can't survive in an oxygen-rich environment, but, definitely greedy for nutrients, calcium. A lot of cancers have osteoclast triggering activity, and they start to actually break your own bones down so that they can steal the calcium from your bones to utilize for their own greedy growth. And these cancer cells aren't contributing to the function of any organ that they belong to. In fact, a lot of these cancers are trophoblastic in origin because they are derived from stem cells. And that's where we get, these totipotent stem cells from the early embryo. And that's why stem cell research is so controversial, because it's actually using potential cells that will become a complete human being. So before I digress too much, Dr. Gonzalez has seen similarities, and there are similarities. It's not even similarities, it's exactly the same mechanism by which the trophoblast implants to create the placenta. It's the same mechanism that cancer cells use to get their own blood supply. The only difference is that the trophoblast at some point stops growing, and it stops creating this kind of angiogenesis where it's creating new blood vessels and stealing more and more nutrition from the host, in this case the host being the mother. And when does that stop? When does the trophoblast know, okay, I need to stop creating and stealing all of this nutrition from the mother? It stops when, and it's like day 55 or 56, during embryonic growth, that the pancreas starts releasing digestive enzymes. And I think Dr. Gonzalez's predecessor, the man that he learned all of this from, who studied this and who did the research, and maybe it was actually his predecessor, I can't remember if it was Dr. Kelly or Dr. Beer, one of those two men. They're the ones that actually did the meticulous research to determine that at the stage of development when the pancreas is releasing pancreatic enzymes, that's when the trophoblast and placental development mature and stop going crazy. And in cancer cells, that doesn't happen. It just keeps going and going and going, and these tumors enlarge and they become so invasive, and they break through what's called the basal lamina or basement membrane to access the blood vessels, and these are a lot of how the epithelial type of cancers grow, like those cancers that line the lungs, the bronchial tubes in the lungs, and the lactiferous ducts in the breasts, and the intestinal tract and the large and small intestine. A lot of those types of cancers grow in that way, where they break through the basement membrane to access all of the blood vessels that are deep underneath that epithelial tissue. And so, with that connection, came about what is called the Gonzalez Protocol, which is the protocol used to treat cancer. And he basically uses a specialized diet. He uses detoxification procedures, and he uses pancreatic enzymes, which I think in the time that Dr. Gonzalez was alive, he was hoping he would get funding to determine how or the exact mechanism by which these pancreatic enzymes help to kill the cancer cells, because he sees it happening, but he can't describe the entire mechanism. These pancreatic, and he specifically states that it's the proteolytic enzymes, which are the protein digesting enzymes in the pancreatic digestive tissue that these individuals are taking. So I don't want to get too far away from my Wi-Fi that I might get kicked out again. So the proteolytic enzymes are the enzymes that digest the proteins. And when these are given to cancer patients, their tumors and their cancers dissolve. They break down. Dr. Kelly, who was Dr. Gonzalez's predecessor, who taught Dr. Gonzalez everything he needed to know to develop this Gonzalez protocol, he was suffering with pancreatic cancer himself. And it was so bad that the tumors were protruding through his abdomen. And, he was actually an orthodontist, so he was a very unconventional man. And he started taking these pancreatic enzymes, and he noticed his tumors were going away. And he did go through a healing crisis, because as these cancerous neoplasms broke down, all of the congestion, all of the toxic material that was basically tied up in that mass started, circulating throughout his system, and he had a healing crisis. And so there was this kind of connection, well, I have to help the body eliminate these toxins, because as I break down these cancerous masses and all of these toxins are then released into my bodily fluids, I'm going to feel really sick until I eliminate them. So they use coffee enemas in this process. So I find that very, very interesting and very promising for people. And there's a lot of people out there that have, I think I subscribe to the Gonzalez Protocol YouTube channel, which I recommend all of you do. They put out a video just today of a woman who is an 18-year survivor for pancreatic cancer. I mean, this is the type of cancer, pancreatic cancer. The rate of survival is incredibly low. Not too many people live past the 5-year mark. I mean, maybe, don't quote me on this, but it's got to be, I think, less than 3 or 2%. But with Dr. Gonzalez and his protocol, it was more than 30%. And he was taking, late stage 4 individuals. And he did note that those individuals that did the traditional method of treatment prior to seeing him, their survival rates were not as good. He had much more success with those individuals that stayed away from the allopathic treatments of chemo and radiation therapy. But, I think he might have still been able to help those people that did have those treatments. Not everybody. Your chances are much better. Let's put it this way. Your chances are much better if you avoid toxic treatments. And, so that's things like that. That's what I want to put into the textbook I'm going to be writing, because we talk about the trophoblast in my course. And I want students to know why learning this? Why understanding how the human body works? Why this can empower you as a natural health professional, because it really can. And it's this knowledge is power. It's freedom. Knowledge is freedom, because the more you know, the better decisions you can make, and the better advice you can give. So anyway, that's what I want to say about that. I don't know if anybody is making comments, because I'm on my phone and I don't know how to look at comments on the phone. Alright, I don't think anybody's making any comments, so I do have questions. I might have to go back inside, because several people have emailed me questions for this live Q&A, and for those of you that may have just joined, there's a plane overhead. For those of you that may have just joined, my laptop was giving me problems. Okay, Diana has a question. How does Dr. Gonzalez compare to Dr. Morse? Dr. Morse is against coffee enemas. That is true. Dr. Morse is not a big fan of coffee enemas, and Dr. Gonzalez does use coffee enemas. His protocol, I believe, uses them because he knows that when you kill cancerous neoplasms, that you're releasing all of that toxic junk that created the tumor in the first place, just like Dr. Morse describes. You know, we don't just wake up one day with cancer. It's something that has progressed through stages. You had an irritant that you, through a lack of changing your lifestyle or through taking suppressive pharmaceutical drugs, you never got rid of that irritant. And as long as that irritant is active, it continues to do damage, and that irritant becomes then inflammation, and then prolonged inflammation becomes tissue change or cancer or loss of function. So the cause grows, and it starts to accumulate more and more acidic waste products. And as we break down those cancer cells, all of that acid, along with the dead cancer cells, is broken down and has to be eliminated. So I think the way that Dr. Gonzalez works compared to Dr. Morse is they have different mechanisms to get that out of the body. Dr. Morse prefers the lymphatic system and the kidneys. So, you know, all of our organs and tissues not only have a blood capillary bed, but also lymphatic capillaries. And our lymphatic capillaries can pick up a lot of these waste products. And our bodily fluids are filtered by the kidneys, and basically it's our kidneys that are filtering internal waste products. So in my opinion, Dr. Morse's mechanism of elimination makes a little bit more sense, because the kidneys filter internal waste products. Whereas, you know, the coffee enemas, they're filtering, well, they're helping to clean the lower bowel, the large intestine. I know that there is, my puppy is so cute. I know that there is, with coffee enemas, there has been a mechanism described that when the caffeine is introduced into the sigmoid colon, there is kind of this neurohepatic reflex arc where that neurons fire to stimulate the liver to then cause the bile to be released from the gallbladder, and that's released into the intestinal tract. So the liver, which is a major organ of detoxification, so you know, Dr. Morse knows this as well. So, and Dr. Morse does support liver cleansing. Dr. Morse has a really good liver detoxification program that I do myself occasionally, not too often, but every now and then, because doing a liver flush maybe once a year I think is very much recommended, because a liver flush will help to soften and allow to evacuate all of those gallstones that can back up in all of the small hepatic ducts and bile ducts. So you know, I think that, and maybe this is something I might do, and maybe I'll talk to Dr. Morse about it, but, you know, maybe doing a modified version of what Dr. Gonzalez does, but using our own methods of elimination to help, you know, the body get through these healing crises. Because if somebody does have a very chronic, allopathically diagnosed ease, like cancer, they're going to have to go through some major healing crises, and it's important to open up all of the channels of elimination. So coffee enemas, caffeine, theobromide, it's very enervating, and I think that's why Dr. Morse doesn't like to use them. But there are other methods of elimination. That's not the only one. And, supporting the kidneys, very important. So if I were consulting with somebody who wanted to do the Gonzalez protocol, I would be recommending that they get on the kidney and lymphatic herbs, because you definitely want to support the kidneys when you're doing any type of healing detoxification program. Are you using pancreatic enzymes? No, I'm not using pancreatic enzymes, and I don't recommend them to anybody. I'm just saying that if people out there were using them, and they were using them in the treatment of whatever they were diagnosed with, I would suggest to them to not just do coffee enemas, or maybe replace the coffee enemas with the kidney and lymphatic herbs, because I do believe those herbs, which help to support those organs and those vessels to help really get that out of our tissue spaces, are so important to strengthen. So yeah, I don't use pancreatic enzymes. I'm not recommending them. All I'm saying is that I'm always amazed by the by what's out there, by what other natural healers have done. And I think we're always learning, and who's to say, maybe I'll experiment with it someday. I don't know. Right now, I feel like, because I was brought into the natural health field through natural hygiene, which is even the natural hygienist kind of go against Dr. Morse's use of herbs. Everybody's got their own opinion about what should and shouldn't be used. So, I was a natural hygienist from the beginning, and then I kind of saw what Dr. Morse was doing, and I saw the benefit of the herbs. So who's to say in the future maybe I'll see the benefit of something else? I'm not totally going against it, but I'm interested in it. And I think that we should never shut the door to any modality that could be beneficial for somebody, because I think that, if you're working with a client, and I'm saying this as, if this were me, but if I was working with a client that I was struggling with, why not try something like pancreatic enzymes or other proteolytic enzymes to see if they would be beneficial? Dr. Morse is against supplements, but I know sometimes he feels supplements can help people get through certain stages of this process of healing. Because, like for vitamin D, for instance, vitamin D is a vitamin that we actually produce ourselves. But in order to produce vitamin D, this is what you have to have working perfectly. You have to have healthy skin. You have to have a healthy liver. You have to have healthy kidneys. And you have to have healthy parathyroid glands. Because vitamin D production involves the skin, the liver, and the kidneys all working perfectly, because the reactions that lead to the production of vitamin D occur in those three organs. And the last organ, the kidney, in order for it to make the active form of vitamin D, which is called calcitriol, it needs parathyroid hormone. So if you have a parathyroid hormone deficiency, you're not going to produce enough vitamin D. And without vitamin D, we don't absorb calcium. And this is why Dr. Morse recommends parathyroid glandulars, because he knows a lot of people are deficient there. And some of the parathyroid glandulars, there's different complexes, but some of them come complexed with vitamin D. So it's all, the stuff that's out there that is available to help people detoxify and then regenerate. It's all very, it's meant to be supportive for those organs that may not be functioning optimally. So that's, oh, my AC just turned on. I'm going to have to go back inside. But yeah, right now I don't recommend or use pancreatic enzymes, to answer your question, Diana. But I do find natural healers like Dr. Gonzalez very inspirational. And I find his death to be quite upsetting. It's never been, no one has ever noted why he died. I mean, he seemed to be, like I said, pretty healthy. And then I think just hours before he collapsed and died, he had sent an email to somebody, one of his colleagues, because I was watching an interview about him, and one of his colleagues had mentioned that he received an email from Dr. Gonzalez just before his death. So that's kind of upsetting. Why are these natural health doctors passing away? And, is there a conspiracy behind it? A lot of people think there is. People have asked his wife and people that know him to describe what had happened and how he died, but everybody's hush-hush about it. And I think there's a lot of fear, because fear controls people. Fear is what gets people to accept these crazy treatments like chemotherapy and radiation therapy. Because when these people feel threatened, they will... Hey Marcy, how are you? When these people feel threatened, or they feel like they're scared, and if you have a diagnosis like, the C word, it's very scary. And a lot of people don't know what to do. And so what a lot of natural healers are putting forth is that your body can heal itself. You have to detoxify first. You have to remove the cause, and then support the organs of elimination to get that out of your body. And then you can have healing and regeneration take place. Hi Marcy, you are so beautiful too. I hope you're doing well. But that is why we're all trying to help people get through these very chronic diseases. So I wanted to pull up some of the questions that were sent to me. And I want to see if I can get to them. My laptop is starting to break down, so I don't know what's going on here. If I can even see my questions any longer. I was on my laptop for this Q&A, and then I'm going to put this right here. Trying to do laptop work with the phone. It's kind of interesting. Okay, I think Stephen, his question was from a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to start with Stephen's question first. And I have to move my phone over here. Okay, Stephen writes, where does anxiety come from? What starts the feelings? I have a friend with a good life, but has a hard time with anxiety. Tell me your thoughts and what can be done about this. I thought a couple of weeks ago I talked about anxiety. Anxiety is associated with the adrenal glands. I think this was probably from a few weeks ago. This question I think I already addressed. So, but in case, Stephen, you didn't get the initial answer to that, it's the adrenal glands. So when your adrenal glands are, first of all, when they're congested, and you can see this on the iris when you're doing an iris reading. You can look at the kidney and the kidney and adrenal gland area on the iris, and you can see if there's any lymphatic congestion there. And a lot of times that congestion can hyperstimulate the adrenal glands, and as they're trying to kind of wake up a little bit, they might hypersecrete various hormones like cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine. These are the common stress hormones that are released in a stress response. And so a lot of us, though, when you reach that stage of stress, and I think I talked about in my last video the 3 phases of stress, which are A, R, E. There's the alarm phase, that's A. There is the resistance phase, that's R, and then E is the exhaustion phase. And during the alarm phase, epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are adrenaline basically, they're released. And then during the resistance phase, cortisol, another stress hormone, is released. And then basically the exhaustion phase is the phase you don't want to get to. This is the phase where you have depleted your resources, your electrolytes start to go out of balance, your hormone production starts to decline, because basically you can't make them. You've just overexhausted these hormones because you're constantly stimulating them to be secreted. So any of these three phases could be correlated with anxiety, but then sometimes people get to what's called adrenal burnout, where at that phase, they're so depleted they just have no energy, and they hit a wall and they can't get out of bed. And this is kind of when your body's telling you to stop and rest, and this is when you really need to hit the detox. You really need to just kind of go on the grapes or go on a lemon fast and break up that congestion, open up the channels of elimination, and get that out of there. Daz writes, Patty, you are truly inspirational and we are blessed to have your help. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you writing that. If you have a question, let me know. I'm just going through my email questions right now, and my laptop's acting weird, so I'm doing my best to find these questions, despite the fact that I don't have a working laptop. At least I can access my email, though. Okay, so here's another question. This is from, I think, Matt, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So this is from Matt. I think Matt sent me several questions, and Matt, I don't know if I'm doing these in the correct order because my laptop's having some issues right now. But I'll read this one since it's open. I am sending this question for your Sunday show. I have malabsorption. It's been 4 years this May since being fruitarian. As usual, not 100%, all the time, ups and downs. I was told by the Dr. Morris Clinic my malabsorption is more on the cellular level and not due to unclean small intestine or lymphatic engorgement in the small intestine. I really don't know. Well, if they said that, and I'm assuming that perhaps you were talking to a counselor, maybe they didn't see a stomach ring or a malabsorption ring, which is usually you can see those right inside of the, or I should say just lining the pupil, which is like the black hole going through your iris. Sometimes you can see that looks very congested, kind of brownish. You can even see congestion in the stomach ring itself. You can see lacunae there, which can denote a weakness in that area. So if they were saying that, they were telling you that they're saying it's not due to an unclean small intestine. Perhaps they were saying that just cleaning the small intestine won't help. But it's on the cellular level, which I'd have to understand what they meant by that, what they meant by it's on the cellular level. Do you have a guess what may be going on? I'm 135, 6'1". I used to be 185. If it's on the cellular level, what would possibly be involved? What gland or chemical? I'm tired of being cold and skinny. It might be good to have another set of eyes on this. I went through Dr. Morris for about 4 years and have been on the whole gamut of herbs and glandulars. I've started working out and I've done numerous fasts, but sometimes I filter mighty, and sometimes after 36-hour dry fast, I'm assuming that's dry fast, I hardly filter at all. I think I may have a different crystal ball into my issue. In your opinion, do I need to do more green drinks, higher proteins for my workout? I know about the gorilla thing, punting people across the football fields on fruits only. Okay, so, try to read that, sorry, I apologize. So the green drink, so if you're very thin and you've been on the fruit, and I'm assuming before when you weighed 185 that you were not doing the fruit, and then being on the fruit you lost a lot of weight. And being 135 at 6'1", that is, I think, quite thin. I would definitely, do more of the green drinks. I think that's a wonderful recommendation. I know Dr. Morse's superfood formulas are really good at helping to rebuild. He even has a muscle formula. You're probably aware of it, the muscles by nature. That might be helpful. Oops, what happened? Okay. Yeah, but sometimes it takes time, I mean, we have to remember that healing is not instantaneous. The way allopathic drugs work, instantaneous. They can suppress symptoms like that and get you to feeling how you want to feel, but are they doing it in a natural way? And are you not getting the lack of side effects, which is what Dr. Morse and other detoxification specialists are trying to put forth, that we want to heal in a way that's not going to create more problems. So I would be interested, Matt, in looking at your iris photos to see exactly what maybe you were told. Why is it that it's a cellular type of congestion or a cellular issue and not a congestion issue? Because with malabsorption, typically we would recommend something like the GI Broom, and it's always good to be on a stomach and bowel formula when you're detoxifying, because again, you want to support healthy bowel movements, but at the same time, it would be nice if you would start putting on some weight. So that's a good question. Yeah, I would be interested in knowing what herbs and glandulars you have done. But the thin issue, I know for a lot of men can be a problem. And before I just kind of start rambling here, let me go to my next question down here. Marcy wrote, awesome response. Thank you, Marcy. Would love to hear your take on the emotions driving the hypothalamus and the adrenal hormone response. Well, Marcy, I learned a lot about emotions from you, honestly. So you are my go-to person for that link. But yeah, the hypothalamus, there's the hypothalamus, and it controls, or it releases a hormone called corticotropin releasing hormone, which then targets the pituitary, and I don't know why, but it controls the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland controls the adrenal gland. So there is what's called the HPA axis. And the HPA axis is associated with not only, well, let's put it this way. The hypothalamus is part of the brain, so it's dealing with a lot of incoming signals. And there could be strong emotions linked to the hypothalamus that could trigger through the pituitary the adrenals. The hypothalamus is part of what is called the limbic system, which is the emotional center of the body, or the emotional part of the brain. And it's so interesting because emotions and the hypothalamus kind of go hand in hand, being that it is part of that limbic system. And obviously our emotional state, our belief systems, how we deal with stress, and that has a lot to do with our belief systems, that can trigger inappropriate and either hypo or hyper stimulation of other endocrine glands, including the adrenals, including the thyroid gland. So not only does the hypothalamus through the pituitary control the adrenal glands, but it's also through the pituitary controlling the thyroid gland. So we have kind of a gland controlling a gland controlling a gland. And yeah, the So yeah, any strong emotion with the hypothalamus could trigger that. I would imagine both adrenals and thyroid, it's coming back to Dr. Gonzalez again. He wrote another book, so I have a couple of his books. One's called The Trophoblastic Origin of Cancer. The other one is, I think it's called The Autonomic Nervous System and its connection to diet or something like that. And the autonomic nervous system is controlled by the hypothalamus. So he kind of made a correlation between different people that are either sympathetic or parasympathetic dominant. So the parasympathetic dominant individual, they tend to have a harder time getting their sympathetic nervous system to become activated. Whereas the sympathetic dominated individual, and these were the individuals I think he would recommend a high fruit diet to, the sympathetic dominant, because these individuals are stressed all of the time, and their digestion is more correlated with the parasympathetic, and that's why the parasympathetic nervous system is often referred to as the rest and digest system, because it does control digestion. And so with that said, sympathetic individuals have weak digestion, but they have strong glands. So their glands are a little bit stronger, the adrenal, the thyroid. Parasympathetic, on the other hand, their digestion is good, but their glands, their thyroid and their parathyroids and their adrenals, not so good. So it's just kind of interesting how other natural healers kind of talk about this, because again, everything is emotionally linked. Going back though to Matt's question about weight, I'm kind of going back and forth between the comments coming in and the emails. Matt, I would need to know a little bit more information, but all I can say from what you've given me is that green drinks may be really helpful for you, doing a green cleanse. And supporting, I would support the, I don't know. I would like to look at your eyes, really, before I give you any kind of definitive response. So maybe if you can send me your iris photos, that would be great. I would like to look at those. You have another question from Matt. Again, I just watched, hold on a second. I have a feeling it's my pituitary. Since I was young and growing up, I was a tall, skinny kid. It wasn't until I was out of high school I beefed up in a grocery store, and eventually no one could beat me at arm wrestling. And a Marine wrestler went down in shame against me, so I was strong later. Continued to be athletic in life, but since this fruitarian lifestyle, I've lost a lot of weight and just have not gained it back. Dr. Morse has all of my iris photos and 4 years or records. I wanted Attila, but found out he was no longer available. I wonder why Attila's not available. And the young girls would be like talking to my daughter for help. Then I just found you. I guess you just accepted me onto the Facebook A&P, and I looked at your Facebook and voila. I think, all right, so I see what you're saying. I'm not sure why Attila's not available. Maybe he might be really busy right now because of all of the changes, I guess, that have been happening at Dr. Morse's office. But remember at the clinic that Dr. Morse is there. So even if you work with any of the counselors, like when I was a counselor working with Dr. Morse, I was always asking questions. When I was working with a client that I wanted to give the best advice to, I would ask Marcy, I would ask Dr. Morse, I would talk to Attila, and by talking to all of those wise souls, I was able to not only better able to help people, but I found answers that I didn't think I would find. And so those individuals have a lot of support down there when you're getting help from the clinic. So keep that in mind. I wouldn't totally just because the counselors might be a little bit younger. They're there with good backup, okay? And they're learning and they're becoming, like I did, like everybody did. You know, you get clients and you kind of have to decipher what's going on with them by looking at their iris. But I know, I think Julia is a counselor there, and she has been there longer than I was there. And she worked kind of in other modalities. And I know after I left, I think she was even Marcy's assistant for a while. And you learn a lot by doing those things. So I just want to put that out there, that Dr. Morse's clinic is still going to be a great place to get help from. But with that said, I offer help as well. I don't do it in person, so we have to do Skype, assuming my computer's working okay. Or we can do a phone consultation. But if you want to work with me, that's fine, and you can send me your iris photos. You can make an appointment with me through my website, pattyloggernd.com. Let's see, you wrote something else here. My doctor put me on Incremin to increase my hunger, so I was told. My parents started feeding me lots of food. Being the youngest of 5, I'm almost always lost at the table for extra food. Oh, okay. This was something additional you wrote. And then the last thing you wrote, okay. This email has multiple parts, apparently. You just watched Del Bigtree and have seen Andrew Wakefield and Vaxxed years ago. I watched the Wakefield video on your Facebook site. I applaud him. Going to watch again someday. Both of them. Is being fruitarian the best way to get rid of heavy metals like aluminum in our bodies? I think the answer is yes, but maybe something else is better, like watermelon. With the heavy metals, I would go like on the Chem Metal Detox, that herbal formula that Dr. Morse sells. I think is good for that. But keep in mind that sometimes these heavy metals, which are toxic to the body will try to, in its infinite wisdom, to protect you from anything that is toxic. So that could be surrounded by, who knows what, connective tissues, proteins, lipids, water. These are all different mechanisms that the body uses to try to protect itself against toxic exposure. So as you break that down and then you release it into your bodily fluids, it will be circulating for a while, and if you can strengthen herbally the release of that with kidney, lymphatic, maybe the Chem Metal Detox herbal formula, that's all going to be quite helpful. Watermelon is very powerful. Grapes, lemons, very powerful, but keep in mind, these 2 questions that you've emailed me with regards to your diet, your weight, and then detoxing aluminum. I would kind of go within. You said you kind of touch base with your spiritual guides, I saw. Go within and just kind of ask yourself, what do you feel more drawn towards? You can do green drinks, and that will help with aluminum as well. Certain greens, like, what is it? I can't think of it. One of the greens that starts with the letter C. Why can't I think of the name of that green? But there are different greens, maybe if I'll just look it up really quick, that are wonderful for helping to detox heavy metals. And since greens are also beneficial for building, that might be your best method. So let's see if I can pull up this list here. Oh, my laptop. I tell you, these things with technology. Sometimes I just want to get away from technology. So if you're not sure if you have heavy metal poisoning, there are obviously lots of, there are lots of different ways to detect whether or not you have toxic levels of metals like aluminum, but, Yeah, cilantro is what I'm thinking of. Cilantro is a good one. So here are some good, some good heavy metal detox foods to include in your diet. Cilantro, blueberries, lemon. I would start with those. But grapes I would put in there, melons I would put in there. But if you're going to be doing some greens, add some cilantro. Some of them also recommend things like garlic. You know, I'm kind of on the fence with garlic because it is a sulfur-rich food, but, you know, for some people it's very potent. I think some people get good results from garlic. I personally don't add it to my juices, but other people do. Let me see if I can have one more question from the email. I know I had other questions in there, but like I said, I'm having some issues with that. Let's see. Debbie writes, when is the right time or condition of the iris that a glandular can be used effectively, and how long should it be taken? I think I emailed the answer to Debbie, but since the title of her email is questions for the live Q&A, I want to make sure I address it for everyone. So when recommending a glandular, if you're a detoxification specialist and you're concerned whether or not a glandular would be beneficial for your client, I would need to know a lot of details before I would recommend a glandular. I tend to not use the glandulars right off the bat. I prefer, I really kind of prefer the more minimalistic way of helping people heal or helping people detoxify. Sorry, my dogs wanted to go outside. So if I can, you know, get it done with diet and the herbs, that's what I'll begin with. But in certain cases, because, you know, we do live in a genetically weak state of affairs, a lot of us, you know, our glands they've been put through the ringer, and they do need that extra help. And sometimes glandulars are what will help bring these various endocrine glands back on board. So with that said, before I would recommend a glandular, I would look at the iris photos. And, you know, when you're looking at the iris photos, I need to, you know, reset up these live Q&As, honestly, so I can show you guys images. Because I would love to be able to pull up some iris photos for you all and point out on the iris where the various endocrine glands are located anatomically, where their reflex points are located. And I would see, is there a lacuna? Is there any indication there of weakness? Or is there simply congestion there? Because in all of those different scenarios, the iris is telling us how the gland might be responding. If there's a lacuna, that would be an indication for me that a glandular might help, because a lacuna is more so a genetic weakness. And, you know, we need these glands on board to have proper body functioning, because every single organ in the body plays a role in maintaining your body's health. So if one organ or gland is dysfunctional, that's going to affect your whole system. So when you're detoxifying, you need your whole system on board so that you can detoxify, eliminate, and regenerate. That's the whole purpose of a detoxification protocol, is to help get all of the organs back to, you know, to a point where they're all functioning optimally. And so glandulars can be quite beneficial for that. So yes, a lacuna would be an indication that I would give a glandular. If there's a lot of congestion, meaning that when you're looking at the iris, you can see like a lot of like dark, thick lymph, or even like white, thick lymph, or even yellowish, thick lymph. The darker the color, the more chronic the lymph stagnation has been around that gland. And, you know, with those darker colors, it takes a little bit more time to get the lymph that's congested to break up and to be eliminated. And that would be another scenario where I would recommend a glandular. I would say, hey, this person's going to have a little bit of time to get this congestion broken down, and the glandular might be helpful to kind of amp up that gland while it's kind of in a suppressed mode. So hopefully that helps Debbie answer that question. I'm not inside obviously right now. I'm back outside with my dogs. And my laptop has a couple of issues that I need to get addressed. For those of you that weren't with me at the beginning of this live Q&A, I was doing this on my laptop initially, and I was interrupted 3 different times, and basically the live feed just cut out. And so that's why I'm doing this on my phone right now. But I was mentioning on those earlier videos a little bit about my course, a little bit about my future plans, and I'm, really excited about what I want to put out there. I want, I've mentioned this a couple of times before, but I plan on writing my own human anatomy and physiology textbook. And that's going to be kind of my first main goal, is to get that textbook written. And one of the reasons I was talking about Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez early on was because I want to include highlights of natural healers and their modalities when it comes to the human body. And it's not just Dr. Gonzalez. I would love to include a bit about Dr. Morse. I mean, when I get to the lymphatic system, Dr. Morse is going to be my featured natural healer, of course, because he's the one... Oh no, my dog just threw up. Because he was eating so much grass out there. Okay, buddy, inside. Come on, inside. I might have to take care of this. Puppy, are you okay? I feed my puppies quinoa sometimes with veggies and meat, and my little boy just threw up. Come on, guys, let's go inside. We don't need to be around this puke. I know it has food in it, but that's kind of gross. But yeah, Dr. Morse will be highlighted in it. But yeah, for every organ system, I will talk about those healers that have been, pioneers in helping us find alternative ways. And I hate using the word alternative, but finding true natural ways, natural law ways to get our body back to a state of health. Because everything that's featured in the allopathic-oriented textbooks that I currently teach out of, and that I've been teaching out of for the past 20 years, they always highlight some drug or some, surgical technique, and it's not true. It's like, why? This is a book that's talking about how the human body works when it's optimally healthy. Why do I want to learn about a procedure that's going to create ill health? Because a lot of these procedures and these techniques and these drugs aren't getting to the root of the problem. And that's what we want. We want to get to the root of the problem. I was going to show you on my laptop. I underwent a procedure. I think I took a picture of it and put it on my Facebook page. I'd had cupping done. Cupping, C-U-P-P-I-N-G. No, puppy. And it's like I think it's like a Chinese medicine technique where they take these cups and they create a suction and they put it on your back, and then it creates like these round marks. And I had this done just the other day, and I don't know if you guys can see. That's why I'm wearing this shirt. I put this shirt specifically on so that you can see. There you can see one of them. Okay. And the woman that that massages me, I've recently started having massage therapy done because I fell in 2015. I fell rock climbing, and I had a major injury. I mean, I broke so many bones in my left ankle, and I had to have 3 surgeries to put my ankle back together. And I've got a bunch of 2 metal plates, and I don't know how many pins, and they're holding my bones together. And And so this past, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, I've decided enough is enough. I'm going to start doing some deep digging, and I've been detoxing for a while, but I wanted to have other adjuvants to help me detox a little bit more effectively. So I've been incorporating physical therapy, massage therapy, and both of them have really helped. I am going to start jogging, which I was told I could never jog, but my ankle's feeling pretty darn good. I'm going to start jogging again, maybe wear out these puppies if that's even possible. But the other trauma of that fall, when you fall, when you have an injury, your connective tissues kind of start to trap a lot of the toxic waste products that cannot be eliminated. And I know I have a lot of that in my back. And the thing about my back, especially, is that fall wasn't the only fall I've experienced in my life. I was a competitive gymnast when I was younger, and I had a lot of falls as a gymnast, but I had a couple of more traumatic falls where I really hurt my neck, and that's been chronic. So when you add one trauma to another trauma, they kind of amplify, and they become quite restrictive in your motion. So that's why I had the cupping done, to see if there was anything that really can help break down any of the junk that's in the superficial fascia or the connective tissues that are just outside of my muscles in my back where that tension is. And I like to get massages, and they've been very helpful. So that was cupping. That was my first experience with cupping, and I still have all of these marks, and if I was on my laptop you would see they're all up and down my back. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see the picture I put up there. But there's 10 of these circles. I don't know if you can even see this one. And she just put 2 of them on the back of my shoulders, but they're going straight up and down my back, just lateral to the vertebral column. And it's just kind of interesting, And I feel a little bit looser. It feels good. So I highly recommend cupping. I think that's good. Although somebody did write, who was it? Who was it that wrote that? I think somebody posted that she had some negative experiences with cupping, and I would put that out that maybe it's not for everybody. If you know you have a connective tissue weakness, like your parathyroid glandulars are really, really weak, and you bruise easily, and you fracture easily, and your connective tissues are not stable and helpful in holding the integrity of your structure together, I would not do cupping, because it is pulling on the fascia and helping to kind of break up that congestion. But it might cause some damage to certain people. So I think people should be cautious, and this would be for anybody. Some people that have massages can have a lot of pain. I remember Dr. Morris talking about one of the times when Marcy had a massage, and I think the massage therapist did some deep work on her, and it caused a lot of pain, and she'd be the one to tell you the results of that. But I remember it wasn't pleasant. So some of these types of procedures can be a little bit too intense. And so just kind of play it by ear, and ask questions. Ask questions to the therapist. And I don't know why this flipped. Sorry about that. That was funny. I looked around, I'm like, where's my face? So, any other questions for me? But hopefully, Matt, if you're watching this recording, cilantro is good for detoxifying heavy metals. And with that said, I'm probably going to end this live Q&A because I do have some more work to do. Again, lots of things coming forth, though, with the Human Anatomy and Physiology textbook for detoxification, or really for all natural health professionals. And then another thing I was talking about, too, with my online classes, they're still available right now, but I'm thinking about transferring them all to YouTube and making them available to paid students via a private link, because the website that I'm using to host these lectures and the online quizzes, it's incredibly expensive, and I'm losing money every month keeping this website active. So I want this to be a resource available to everybody, but I also don't want to go into debt doing it. So when that's all transferred to YouTube, I will make an announcement, and I'll probably change the way I accept payments, and I'll probably make it even cheaper than it is now. I mean, these courses are pretty cheap as it stands, but I know certain people have told me that they can't afford it quite yet, and so hopefully making it cheaper will make it more accessible to everybody, because I want you to learn this material. But part of the payment will be how I will assess you, because if you're watching these videos and you're learning, I want to make sure that you're understanding it correctly. So there will be material you'll be sending to me that I will be grading and making comments on, and so that's why it's going to be kind of more so of a paid course, so that I can I need to get paid for helping to support the book that I want to write, and for other things that I want to do to help everybody. So, it does help me help you a little bit better if I can do that. But, I don't want to make it expensive that it's not accessible to people. So, no more blabbing. I'm going to end this live Q&A now. I will put a recording in the Human Anatomy and Physiology for Detoxification Specialists Facebook page. This is a private Facebook page, by the way, and I'm asking that people answer the 3 qualifying questions, otherwise it will kick you out. So I'm noticing people are pending, and I'm just wondering, I guess they didn't answer the questions. So you have to answer the questions because I want this to be a place for serious detoxification specialist types of students, or people that are just interested in learning more about their human body because they want to heal themselves or their family or their pets. Okay, it's not just for those working with clients, but it's for anybody. So if you can just answer the questions about what your background is, and that will help me help you a little bit better if I know where you're coming from. Like, are you currently working with clients? Have you gone through Dr. Morris's ISOD classes? Or are you just a big fan of Dr. Morris and you watch all of his videos? I mean, that's education in of itself. That's free education that people can learn quite a bit from just by what Dr. Morris shares with everyone on YouTube. So if you can answer those questions, that will make sure that you're entering into the group. Because if you don't, I don't think it will allow you to enter. Alright, so with that said, I'm going to end this live Q&A. Thank you all for joining me today. I will make a recording of this video and post it in that Human AMP for Detoxification Specialists Facebook group. And I will see you all next week. Alright, bye.